Natalie Morrison had exactly 47 minutes before her next board meeting. 47 minutes to fix a problem that shouldn't have been her problem in the first place. But here she was, driving through suburban Connecticut with a package on her passenger seat because her assistant's assistant had somehow managed to send critical documents to the wrong address. The package contained contracts worth $12 million, signatures needed by end of day, and they were currently sitting at 2247 Maple Street instead of 2247 Maple Avenue because someone had fat-fingered an address and Natalie's entire afternoon had derailed. She pulled up to the house, a modest two-story with peeling paint and a lawn that needed mowing, and grabbed the package with barely controlled frustration. This was beneath her. She was the founder and president of Morrison Media, worth $4.2 billion, and she was playing delivery driver because delegation had failed spectacularly. Natalie strode up the walkway, heels clicking against cracked concrete, and rang the doorbell with more force than necessary. She checked her watch. 45 minutes now. This needed to take less than 2. The door opened. A man stood there, maybe late 30s, wearing a yellow t-shirt stained with what looked like paint and holding a dish towel. He took one look at Natalie and his face went completely white. The towel dropped from his hands. "No," he said, his voice strangled. "No, you can't be here. You need to leave, right now." Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love knowing how far these stories of hope and resilience travel. Your comments inspire us to keep bringing you powerful narratives every week. Natalie blinked, thrown by the visceral reaction. "I'm just here to pick up a package that was delivered to you by mistake. It should have gone to Maple Avenue, not Maple Street." "I don't have your package," the man said quickly, already starting to close the door. "You have the wrong house. Please leave." But Natalie had spent 20 years in boardrooms reading people, and this man was lying. More than that, he was terrified. His hands were shaking, his breathing was rapid, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like something behind him was more frightening than the stranger on his doorstep. "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I really need that package. It's just documents. You can verify they're not yours. I'll show you ID, whatever you need." "Daddy, who's at the door?" A small voice came from inside the house. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, appeared beside the man. She had the same dark hair, the same eyes, but where his face showed fear, hers showed curiosity, until she saw Natalie. Then something else flashed across her features. Recognition, hope, and something that looked dangerously close to relief. "Daddy, it's her," the girl whispered, grabbing her father's arm. "It's really her. She came." The man, her father, looked down at his daughter with an expression of such pain and panic that Natalie felt her irritation evaporate, replaced by concern. Something was very wrong here. Something that had nothing to do with misdelivered packages. "Sweetheart, go back inside." The father's voice was firmer now, protective. He looked at Natalie with something between desperation and anger. "You need to go. Please, just go." But Natalie couldn't move. That look in the girl's eyes, Maya's eyes, was doing something to her, breaking through the armor of efficiency and productivity she'd worn for so long. "What letter?" she heard herself ask. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love knowing how far these stories of hope and resilience travel. Your comments inspire us to keep bringing you powerful narratives every week.
"Please," the father said again, but his voice had lost its force. He sounded exhausted, defeated. "You can't be here. If anyone sees you here, if they connect you to us, everything will fall apart." "I don't understand," Natalie said. "Connect me to you how? I don't even know who you are." The man laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "No, of course you don't. Why would you? You're Natalie Morrison. You're on magazine covers and news programs, and I'm nobody. Just the guy trying to keep his daughter safe." "Safe from what?" Natalie pressed. The man looked at her for a long moment, clearly weighing something. Finally, he seemed to come to a decision. You really don't know? You really didn't read Maya's letter? I receive hundreds of letters a week. I can't possibly read them all. Right. Of course. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it standing up in tufts. Look, I'm Julian Blake, and the reason I'm freaking out right now is because 9 years ago, I did something really stupid that almost destroyed your company. The name clicked. Julian Blake. Natalie's mind flashed back nearly a decade. The embezzlement scandal that had rocked Morrison Media in its early days. An accountant who'd stolen nearly $3 million over 2 years, siphoning money through fake vendors and shell companies. They'd caught him, prosecuted him, recovered most of the money. He'd served 6 years in prison. You, Natalie breathed. You're the one who stole from me. Yes. Julian's shoulders sagged. I served my time. I've been out for 3 years, trying to rebuild a life, trying to be a good father to Maya. And I know my daughter wrote to you. I found the letter after she'd already sent it. She'd seen you on TV, heard about your charitable foundation, and in her 9-year-old wisdom, she thought you might help us because I can't find work, and we're about to lose this house, and... His voice broke. I tried to stop her from sending it. I knew you'd never help. Why would you? I stole from you. I nearly destroyed what you'd built, and now you're standing on my doorstep, and I don't know if you're here to gloat, or... I'm here for a package, Natalie interrupted, her mind reeling. I had no idea about any of this. I don't even know where your house is in relation to anything. This is a complete accident. Julian laughed again, that same bitter sound. An accident. Right. The woman I stole millions from accidentally shows up at my door the same week my daughter writes her a letter begging for help. That's not an accident. That's the universe being cruel. Maya had been watching this exchange in silence, but now she stepped forward. I wrote to you because my daddy is a good person, she said, her voice small but determined. I know he made a mistake. He tells me about it all the time. He says he has to live with what he did every day. But he's good now. He helps our neighbors and coaches my soccer team, and he's teaching himself programming so he can maybe get a job that doesn't check backgrounds, but nobody will hire him, and we're running out of money, and I thought maybe if you knew he was sorry, really sorry, you might help him find work. The girl's eyes were filling with tears, but she blinked them back fiercely. I know it was stupid. Daddy said you'd never help someone who hurts you, but I had to try, because he's the best daddy in the world, and he doesn't deserve to keep being punished forever for one mistake. Natalie stood frozen. She should leave, should collect her package if it was even here, and get back to her life. She had a board meeting in 39 minutes. She had a company to run. She had no obligation to these people, especially not to a man who'd stolen from her. But that little girl's words were echoing in her head. Doesn't deserve to keep being punished forever for one mistake. The package, Natalie said finally. Was there a delivery here yesterday? Large envelope, probably marked urgent. Julian nodded slowly. It's inside, on the kitchen counter. I didn't open it. I figured someone would come for it. He paused. I'll get it. Just wait here. He disappeared inside, leaving Natalie on the doorstep with Maya, who was studying her with those huge, hopeful eyes that made Natalie want to run back to her car and her scheduled life where everything made sense. Are you as mean as Daddy says you are in your company? Maya asked suddenly. Maya! Julian's voice came from inside, horrified. But Natalie found herself answering honestly. Probably. I didn't build a successful company by being nice. But you help people with your foundation, Maya countered. I saw it on the news. You give money to schools and hospitals and stuff. That's different. That's... Natalie stopped. Was it different? Or was it easier to help strangers than to help someone who'd actually wronged her? Easier to write checks to causes than to face the human cost of her hardline business practices? Julian returned with the package, handed it to Natalie without meeting his eyes. "Here, I'm sorry for the confusion, and I'm sorry for what I did 9 years ago. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. Sorry. Every single day." Natalie took the package, should have left, should have returned to her car. Instead, she heard herself ask, "How much do you owe on the house?" Julian's head snapped up. "What? You said you're about to lose the house. How much do you owe?" "Ms. Morrison, I'm not asking you for money. That's not... Maya shouldn't have written that letter. We'll figure something out." "How much?" Natalie repeated. $14,000, Julian said quietly. 3 months behind the mortgage, the bank's starting foreclosure proceedings, but I'll fix it. I'll find work. I just need time. $14,000. Natalie spent more than that on shoes last year. It was nothing to her, less than nothing, but to this man, this family, it was everything. "And what then?" Natalie asked. "You pay off the back mortgage, and then what? You still can't find work because of your record. You fall behind again in 6 months. This isn't a solution, it's a Band-Aid." "I know that," Julian said, frustration creeping into his voice, "but it buys me time to figure something else. Maybe I can finish the programming certification. Maybe someone will take a chance on me. I don't know, but I'm not giving up." Natalie looked at this man, this thief who'd nearly destroyed her company in its infancy, and saw something she didn't expect. She saw herself, desperate, fighting for survival, refusing to quit even when everything was stacked against him. She'd been there once, in the early days, before the billions, when one wrong move could have ended everything. "I have a board meeting," Natalie said, checking her watch. "In 36 minutes, I need to go." She saw Maya's face fall, saw Julian's jaw tighten in resignation. They expected this, expected her to walk away. And why wouldn't they? She had every reason to. But as Natalie turned toward her car, package in hand, she made a decision that would change everything. She turned back. "I'll be back tomorrow, morning, 9 o'clock. Don't go anywhere." And before either of them could respond, she walked to her car and drove away, her mind already racing with possibilities she had no business considering.
Natalie made her board meeting with 3 minutes to spare. She delivered the contracts, handled the approvals, participated in strategy discussions. But for the first time in her 20-year career, her mind wasn't fully present. Part of her was still standing on that cracked doorstep, looking into a little girl's desperate, hopeful eyes. After the meeting, she called her head of HR into her office. Thomas Chen had been with her for 15 years, had helped build Morrison Media's infrastructure, and was one of the few people she trusted completely. "I need you to pull a file for me," Natalie said. "Julian Blake, former employee, left the company 9 years ago." Thomas's expression shifted. "The embezzlement case? Why do you need that?" "Just pull it. I want to review everything. The investigation, the trial transcripts, the restitution records, everything." "Natalie, what's this about?" "Just pull the file, Thomas, please." That evening, Natalie sat in her penthouse office, city lights glittering below, and read every document related to Julian Blake's case. The more she read, the more complex the picture became. Yes, he'd stolen money, that was undeniable, but the circumstances were more nuanced than she remembered. His wife had been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. Their insurance had denied coverage for the experimental treatment her doctors recommended. Julian was desperate, drowning in medical debt, watching his wife die. It didn't excuse what he'd done. Theft was theft, but it explained it. He hadn't stolen to buy luxury items or fund a secret life. He'd stolen to try to save his wife's life, and he'd failed anyway. She died 3 months before they'd caught him, leaving him alone with a newborn daughter and the crushing guilt of what he'd done. The trial transcript showed a man broken by grief and shame. He'd pled guilty immediately, hadn't fought the charges, had cooperated fully in helping recover the stolen funds. His lawyer had argued for leniency given the circumstances.
The judge had given him 8 years, of which he'd served 6 with good behavior. Natalie set down the last file and stared out at the city. She'd been so angry when they'd discovered the theft. Betrayed. Determined to prosecute to the fullest extent. She'd wanted justice, wanted to send a message that nobody stole from Natalie Morrison and got away with it. She'd never stopped to learn the full story, never asked why. She'd just seen the numbers, seen the betrayal, and moved forward with her characteristic ruthless efficiency. Now, 9 years later, she knew the story, and it complicated everything. Her phone rang, her assistant. "Miss Morrison, I have the research you requested on Julian Blate's recent history. Send it to my personal email, and thank you for working late." The research painted a picture of a man trying desperately to rebuild a shattered life. Julian had been released from prison 3 years ago. He'd moved to Connecticut to be near his late wife's parents, who helped with Maya. He'd applied to over 200 jobs. Not one had called him back. He'd been coaching youth soccer, volunteer position, no pay, but it gave him something to do and let him be part of Maya's life. He'd been taking online programming courses, teaching himself skills that might lead to remote work where background checks weren't as stringent. He'd been doing odd jobs for neighbors, repairs, yard work, anything to bring in a few dollars. And he'd been failing, slowly, inexorably, failing. The house he'd inherited from his wife's parents was falling into disrepair because he couldn't afford maintenance. The mortgage payments he'd been managing to scrape together for 3 years had finally become impossible. The bank was foreclosing. In 6 months, Julian and Maya would be homeless. Natalie closed the report and made another decision. She pulled up her schedule for the next day, canceled 3 meetings, and sent a message to her driver to be ready at 8 a.m. Then she called Thomas again. "I need you to come with me tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, and bring your legal pad. We're going to need to take notes." "Natalie, what's your plan?" "Something I should have done 9 years ago. I'm going to fix a mistake."
Natalie arrived at Julian's house at exactly 9 a.m., Thomas trailing behind her, looking confused and concerned. She'd worn her yellow power suit, the one she wore when making major business decisions, and carried a leather portfolio filled with documents she'd prepared the night before. Julian answered the door, looking exhausted. "You came back. I honestly didn't think you would." "I said I would be here," Natalie replied. "This is Thomas Chen, my head of HR. May we come in?" Julian stepped aside, let them enter. The house was clean but shabby, furniture worn, walls needing paint. But there were touches of warmth, photos of Maya, drawings displayed on the refrigerator, a small shelf of books. Someone was trying hard to make this a home. Maya appeared from the kitchen, still in pajamas, eating cereal. Her eyes widened when she saw Natalie. "You came back! Daddy, she came back!" "Maya, go get dressed for school," Julian said gently. "But, now, Bug, please." The girl scurried off, but not before giving Natalie a look of such pure hope that it made Natalie's chest tight. When they were alone, Julian turned to Natalie. "Ms. Morrison, I appreciate you coming back, but if this is about the foreclosure, I can't accept money from you. I know Maya put you in an awkward position with that letter, but I can't—" "This isn't about charity," Natalie interrupted. "This is about a business proposition." Julian blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Natalie opened her portfolio, pulled out a document. "I spent last evening reviewing your case file, all of it, and then I had my team research what you've been doing since your release. I know about the 200 job applications, the programming courses, the volunteer coaching, the odd jobs. You've been trying to rebuild your life. And failing," Julian said bitterly. "And hitting walls that shouldn't exist," Natalie corrected. "You served your time. You paid your debt to society, but society won't let you move forward because one mistake defines you forever." She paused. "That's wrong. Ms. Morrison, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm offering you a job," Natalie said bluntly. The room went silent. Thomas looked shocked. Julian looked like he'd been slapped. "What?" Julian finally managed. "A job. At Morrison Media. In our IT department.
You'd be working on internal systems, database management, nothing that touches finances. You'd report directly to Thomas. The salary is $75,000 to start, with benefits and retirement. Standard employment contract, with one exception. You'd be on probation for the first year. Any hint of misconduct, any sign you're not taking this seriously, and you're gone immediately. No second chances. You're staring at me like I've lost my mind. You want to hire the man who stole $3 million from you? I want to hire someone who has spent 9 years paying for one desperate mistake. Someone who's been trying to do the right thing despite a system designed to keep him down. Someone who's clearly dedicated to being a good father and contributing member of society but can't get past a background check. This is insane. You breathe? Why would you do this? Natalie set down the portfolio, met his eyes directly. Because 9 years ago, when I found out about the theft, I never asked why. I just prosecuted. I was so focused on justice, on sending a message, on protecting my company, that I never looked at the human being behind the crime. I never learned that you were watching your wife die and trying anything to save her. That doesn't excuse what I did, Julian said. No, it doesn't. But it contextualizes it. And more importantly, you've paid for it. You've served your time. You've been trying to rebuild. And I've been watching ex-convicts struggle to reintegrate for years through my foundation work, throwing money at programs, never really understanding what it means to have one mistake follow you forever. I want to do something different, something that actually matters. You could help anyone. Why me? Why the person who hurt you? Because that's exactly why it matters, Natalie said quietly. If I can forgive you, actually forgive you by giving you a real chance to rebuild your life, then maybe I can finally stop being the person who measures everything by profit and loss and start being someone who sees human beings. You hurt me, yes, but I've spent 9 years being angry about it without once considering what you lost. Your wife, your freedom, your future. Maybe it's time we both moved forward. Julian sank into a chair, looking dazed. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Thomas interjected, speaking for the first time. He was looking at Natalie with something like respect. Say yes, do the work, prove her right, and don't make me regret vouching for this. You vouch for it? Julian asked, surprised. Ms. Morrison doesn't make impulsive decisions. If she's offering this, she's thought it through. And frankly, I've seen your programming portfolio. You're self-taught, which is impressive. We can use someone with your skill set. But understand, you mess this up, you make her look bad for giving you this chance, and I will personally make sure you never work anywhere ever again. Julian looked between them, tears streaming down his face. I don't deserve this. Probably not, Natalie agreed. But Maya does. She deserves a father who can provide for her, who doesn't have to choose between the mortgage and groceries. She deserves stability. So you're going to take this job. You're going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life, and you're going to show your daughter that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. Maya chose that moment to reappear, dressed for school, and stopped dead at the sight of her father crying. Daddy? What's wrong? Julian looked at his daughter, then at Natalie, then back at Maya. Nothing's wrong, Bug. Everything's right. Ms. Morrison just offered me a job. Maya's face lit up like the sun. Really? Really, really? Really, really, Natalie confirmed. Your dad starts next Monday, which means you don't have to worry about moving. You get to stay in your house, in your school, with your friends. The girl launched herself at Natalie in a hug so fierce it nearly knocked her over. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I knew you'd help. I knew it. Natalie, who couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her like this, awkwardly patted Maya's back. You're welcome, but thank your dad. He's the one who's going to do the hard work.
The first month was rocky. Julian showed up every day at 7 a.m., left at 6 p.m., worked through lunch. He was determined to prove himself, but the other employees were skeptical. Word had leaked about his past, it always did, and people were uncomfortable. The man who'd stolen from the company was now working 3 floors down. Natalie heard the whispers, saw the sidelong glances. She'd expected it. What she hadn't expected was how protective she'd feel.
When someone made a snide comment in the break room about checking their wallets, Natalie happened to overhear and made it very clear that any discrimination would result in immediate termination. "He served his time," she'd said coldly. "He's here because he's qualified and because everyone deserves a second chance. If you have a problem with that, my HR department can process your resignation today." The whispers stopped, at least the loud ones. Julian, for his part, kept his head down and worked. Thomas reported that he was exceeding expectations, solving problems quickly, suggesting improvements to their systems. He was good, really good. Within 6 weeks, he'd identified 3 security vulnerabilities that could have been exploited and had proposed elegant solutions for all of them. "He's wasted in basic IT," Thomas told Natalie. "He should be in cybersecurity. He's got an instinct for finding weaknesses." "Then promote him," Natalie said. "After 6 weeks?" Thomas looked skeptical. "He's good at his job. That's what matters. Promote him, raise his salary, put him where he can do the most good." She paused. "But make it clear, this isn't charity. This is merit. He earned it." The promotion happened, and something shifted. People saw that Julian wasn't being given handouts, he was earning his place. Slowly, grudgingly, the company began to accept him. Natalie watched from a distance, checking in with Thomas weekly, monitoring Julian's progress. She told herself it was standard due diligence, making sure her decision to hire him was justified, but the truth was more complex. She was invested now. Invested in his success, invested in proving that second chances could work. 3 months in, Julian requested a meeting with her. Natalie's assistant scheduled it, and she found herself nervous, which was absurd. She was never nervous. Julian entered her office looking professional in the blue button-down and khakis that had become his work uniform. "Miss Morrison, I wanted to thank you, and to show you something." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. It was Maya, standing in front of their house, now repainted, the lawn neatly mowed, new shutters on the windows. She was grinning, holding a sign that said, "Thank you, Miss Morrison." "I've been able to fix up the house," Julian explained. "Maya and I did most of the work ourselves on weekends. It's not perfect, but it's ours. Really ours. The mortgage is current. I've even started a college fund for Maya. He gave me my life back. I don't know how to thank you." Natalie looked at the photo, at that little girl's smile, and felt something crack in her chest. "You're thanking me by doing exactly what you're doing, working hard, being a good father, proving that second chances matter." "It's more than that, though," Julian said. "You could have just paid off my mortgage and walked away. That would have been generous enough. But you gave me a job. You gave me dignity. You gave me a way to provide for my daughter without shame. That's everything." "I gave you an opportunity," Natalie corrected. "You're the one who took it and ran with it." Julian shook his head. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. That's not nothing. That's everything." He hesitated, then continued. "I wanted you to know I'm working with a program now, helping ex-convicts navigate re-entry, sharing what I've learned. Because you're right, the system is broken. People pay their debt and then can't move forward. But if I can help even one person find work, find hope, then maybe I can pay forward what you did for me." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, which was ridiculous. She didn't cry. She was Natalie Morrison. She made billion-dollar decisions without flinching. But she was crying now. "That's good," she managed. "That's really good, Julian." 6 months after Julian started, Natalie received a call from a journalist, a national business magazine, wanting to do a profile. Standard request. She'd done a dozen of them. But this one was different. "We heard a rumor that you hired an ex-convict who stole from your company. We want to know if it's true and why you do something like that." Natalie's first instinct was to shut it down, refuse the interview, keep the story quiet. But then she thought about what Julian had said, about helping others navigate re-entry, about paying it forward. "Yes, it's true," she said, "and I'll give you an interview." But on one condition. You also interview Julian Blake. You tell his full story, not just the sensational parts. You talk about what he's accomplished in the past 6 months. You show what second chances can look like. The journalist agreed. The interview happened. And the article, when it published, was everything Natalie had hoped for. It told Julian's story honestly. The desperation, the theft, the prison time, the struggle to rebuild. But it also told the story of his redemption, his work at Morrison Media, his help to other ex-convicts. And it told Natalie's story too, her decision to hire the man who'd wronged her, her growing understanding that punishment without possibility of redemption was just cruelty, her foundation's new initiative to help companies hire people with criminal records. The article went viral. Natalie's phone exploded with calls, some supportive, some critical. How could she hire a criminal? Wasn't she worried he'd steal again? Wasn't she being naive? But there were other calls too. From companies wanting advice on second-chance hiring. From ex-convicts asking for help finding work. From advocacy groups thanking her for using her platform to shine a light on re-entry challenges. And there was one call that mattered most. From Maya's school. The principal wanted to know if Natalie would come speak to the students about second chances and forgiveness. Natalie, who had never spoken at a school, who had no idea how to talk to children, found herself saying yes. The presentation was in the school gymnasium. Natalie stood on a small stage, looking out at rows of children, and felt more nervous than she'd ever been in any boardroom. Maya was in the front row, beaming at her. Julian stood in the back, gave her an encouraging nod. I'm Natalie Morrison, and I'm here to tell you about the time someone hurt me really badly and what I learned from forgiving them. She told the story simply, how Julian had stolen from her company, how she'd been angry and hurt and determined to punish him, how 9 years later she'd ended up on his doorstep by accident and discovered that her need for justice had ignored his humanity. I thought forgiveness meant letting someone hurt you and pretending it didn't matter. But that's not what it means. Forgiveness means acknowledging the hurt, but choosing to give someone a chance to be better. It means understanding that people are more than their worst mistakes. She looked at the children, at their attentive faces. All of you will make mistakes, some small, some big. And when you do, I hope someone gives you a chance to make it right. Not because you deserve it, but because everyone deserves the opportunity to be better than their worst moment. After the presentation, children swarmed her with questions, but one stuck with her. A small boy, maybe 7, raised his hand and asked, "Are you and Mr. Blake friends now?" Natalie looked at Julian, who smiled. "Yes," she said, "we're friends now." And she realized it was true. Somehow, over 6 months of monitored progress reports and cautious trust building, they'd become friends. She'd come to respect his dedication, his intelligence, his determination to be better. And he'd shown her that the ruthless businesswoman she'd been for 20 years was missing something essential: compassion.
8 months in, crisis struck. Morrison Media's servers were hit with a sophisticated cyber attack. Someone had found a vulnerability and exploited it, accessing client data, threatening to release sensitive information unless a ransom was paid. The company went into lockdown. Thomas assembled the IT team. Security consultants were called in, and Julian, now the head of the cybersecurity division, worked around the clock to trace the attack and secure the systems. 3 days into the crisis, whispers started. The attack had come from inside. Someone with detailed knowledge of Morrison Media's systems, someone who knew exactly where the vulnerabilities were. And Julian had just spent 8 months mapping those systems, had access to everything, had the knowledge to exploit any weakness. Natalie heard the whispers from Thomas, who looked sick, bringing her the information. People are saying it's him, that this was all a long con. He got hired, gained access, and now he's holding us hostage. Do you believe that? Natalie asked. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't.
but I'm not sure I can prove it, and the board is demanding answers. Natalie called an emergency board meeting. The members were furious, demanding Julian's immediate termination, threatening lawsuits against Natalie personally for her reckless hiring decision. "We have no proof he's involved," Natalie argued. "He's the only one with the knowledge and motive," one board member shot back. "You hired a thief. This is what happens." "He's also the one leading the effort to stop the attack," Natalie countered. "Firing him now would cripple our response, or it would stop him from doing more damage." The argument went in circles. Finally, Natalie made an executive decision. Julian stays. He works the problem, and if it turns out he's involved, I'll resign. My entire stake in the company, my reputation, I'm betting it all on his innocence. The board went silent. "You're serious?" one member finally said. "Completely. Julian Blake is not behind this attack, and I'm willing to stake everything I've built on that conviction." She left the meeting and went directly to the IT floor, where Julian was hunched over a computer, eyes red from lack of sleep, surrounded by empty coffee cups. "Julian." He looked up, saw her expression. "They think it's me, don't they?" "Some people do, yes." I laughed bitterly. "Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? I'm the ex-con, the thief. Obviously, I'm the prime suspect." "Are you behind this?" Natalie asked directly. Julian met her eyes. "No, I swear to you, I have nothing to do with this attack. I've been working for 3 days straight to stop it." "I believe you," Natalie said simply. Julian's eyes filled with tears. "You do?" "Yes. And I told the board that I'm betting everything on your innocence, so I need you to find whoever's doing this and prove me right." Julian stared at her for a long moment, then nodded, wiping his eyes. "I will. I promise you, I will." He turned back to his computer with renewed determination, and Natalie, who should have been terrified about staking her entire company on an ex-convict's word, felt oddly calm. She'd made the right call. She knew it. 6 hours later, Julian found the breach. It wasn't him. It was a former employee, fired 3 years ago for performance issues, who'd kept backdoor access to the systems and had been planning this attack for months. Julian traced the IP address, found the pattern in the code, built the evidence. The attacker was arrested, the data was secured, and Julian Blake was vindicated. The board meeting the next morning was subdued. Natalie walked in with Julian beside her, presented the evidence, watched as the board members who demanded his firing shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Julian Blake saved this company," Natalie said simply. "He found the real perpetrator when no one else could, and he did it while half the company suspected him. I think we owe him an apology." One by one, the board members apologized. Julian accepted with grace, though Natalie could see how much the suspicion had hurt him. After the meeting, in her office, Julian said quietly, "Thank you for believing in me. When everyone else assumed the worst, you didn't." "I know you," Natalie said. "I know what kind of person you are. One mistake 9 years ago doesn't define you." "It defined me for a long time," Julian admitted. "But you helped me see I could be more than that. You gave me a chance to prove I'm not just the guy who stole money. I'm the guy who fixed his mistake and became someone better."
The 1-year anniversary of Julian's hiring was marked with a company-wide email from Natalie. In it, she announced the new company policy. Morrison Media would actively recruit qualified candidates with criminal records, would provide support and mentorship, would be a company that believed in second chances. She also announced a partnership with several nonprofits focused on re-entry services and a commitment to fund job training programs for ex-convicts in tech fields. Julian Blake showed us what's possible when we choose to see people as more than their worst mistakes, Natalie wrote. Moving forward, this company will be a place where redemption is possible, where second chances are real, and where doing the right thing matters more than protecting ourselves from risk. The policy was controversial. Some employees quit, some clients threatened to leave, but more stayed, more supported it, and new talent came to Morrison Media specifically because of the policy.
drawn to a company that stood for something beyond profit. Julian, now a senior director of cybersecurity, became the face of the initiative. He spoke at conferences, mentored new hires with criminal records, worked with HR to develop training programs. He was good at it, authentic, honest about his past, passionate about helping others avoid his mistakes. And Natalie watched it all unfold with something she'd never felt before. Pride that had nothing to do with financial success. Pride in building something that actually mattered, that changed lives, that made the world incrementally better. One evening, she and Julian were working late, finalizing a presentation for a re-entry conference. Maya was there too, doing homework in the corner of the conference room, occasionally chiming in with observations that were surprisingly insightful for a 9-year-old. "Can I ask you something?" Julian said suddenly. "Why did you really do this? Not the PR reasons, not the social justice angle. Why did you really take a chance on me?" Natalie was quiet for a moment, considering. "Do you remember what Maya said in her letter? The one I never read but found later." "Not word for word." "She said, 'My daddy is a good person who made one really bad choice when he was scared and sad, but punishing him forever won't make that choice go away. It will just waste all the good things he could do if someone gave him a chance.'" Natalie looked at Julian. She was 9 years old and she understood something I'd spent 20 years missing. That justice without mercy is just revenge. That people are more complex than their worst moments. And that giving someone a chance isn't weakness, it's strength. She paused. "I did this because your daughter saw something in you that the world refused to see. And she was brave enough to ask the person you'd wronged to see it too. That kind of courage deserved an answer." Julian's eyes were wet. "She's pretty amazing, isn't she?" "She really is," Natalie agreed, looking at the girl who was now drawing in the margins of her homework. "I'm trying," Julian said. "Every day I'm trying to be the person she believes I am." "You already are," Natalie said. "You just needed someone to see it."
2 years after Julian's hiring, Natalie was invited to speak at a major business conference about Morrison Media's Second Chance initiative. It was a keynote address, thousands in attendance, broadcast to millions. She stood backstage, more nervous than she'd been in years, when Julian found her. "You're going to be great," he said. "I'm terrified," Natalie admitted. "What if I can't make them understand? What if they just see it as naive or risky?" "Then they'll be wrong," Julian said simply. "You changed my life. You changed Maya's life. You've changed dozens of lives through the program. The numbers speak for themselves. Retention rates, proactivity, loyalty. But more than that, you've shown that doing the right thing and running a successful business aren't mutually exclusive." "How did I become the person who cares about this?" Natalie wondered aloud. 2 years ago, I measured everything by profit. Now I'm giving keynote speeches about compassion in business." "You didn't become a different person," Julian said. "You just remembered who you were before you built all those walls. The person who started a company because she wanted to solve problems and help people, not just to make money." Natalie looked at him. "How did you get so wise?" "Prison gives you a lot of time to think," Julian said with a wry smile. "And failing gives you perspective. I learned more from my mistakes than I ever did from my successes." "Me too," Natalie admitted. "Accidentally showing up at your door was the best mistake I ever made." The stage manager signaled. "Time to go on." Julian squeezed her shoulder. "Go show them what second chances look like." Natalie walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. She looked out at thousands of faces and took a deep breath. "2 years ago," she began, "I accidentally delivered a package to the wrong house. That mistake changed my entire understanding of success, forgiveness, and what it means to build a company that matters." She told the whole story, the misdelivered package, the terrified father at the door, the little girl's hopeful eyes. She talked about reading the case file, learning the context, making the decision to hire the man who'd stolen from her. "I didn't do it because I'm a good person," Natalie said honestly. "I did it because a 9-year-old girl asked me to see her father as more than his worst mistake. And once I saw him, really saw him, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't go back to thinking of people as acceptable losses in the pursuit of profit." She presented the data, the success of Julian and the 23 other people with criminal records Morrison Media had hired over the past 2 years, the retention rates that exceeded their general employee population, the innovations and improvements these employees had contributed, the client feedback that was overwhelmingly positive. But more than that, you've shown that doing the right thing and running a successful business aren't mutually exclusive. But here's what the data doesn't show. It doesn't show Julian coaching his daughter's soccer team and mentoring young programmers. It doesn't show Maya's straight-A report cards and her dream of becoming a lawyer to help people like her dad. It doesn't show the ripple effect, the other companies that started second chance programs after hearing our story, the hundreds of people who found work because one little girl had courage and one cynical businesswoman decided to listen. She paused. Let the silence build. I used to think success was measured in dollars and market share. Now I know it's measured in lives changed, in possibilities created, in being brave enough to choose mercy over revenge. Julian Blake stole from me, but I stole from him too. I stole 9 years where he could have been rebuilding instead of just surviving. I can't give those years back, but I can make sure the next person who makes a mistake doesn't lose a decade of their life because of it. The speech ended to a standing ovation, but what mattered most to Natalie was seeing Julian in the wings with Maya, both of them beaming at her and knowing that she'd finally built something that would outlast any business success. She'd built redemption. She'd built hope. And it all started because she delivered a package to the wrong house and a single dad opened the door and froze, terrified that his past had caught up with him. Instead, it was his future arriving, unexpected and transformative, in the form of a second chance.
Natalie sat in her office, now relocate to a building designed with input from employees with disabilities and those with criminal records, reviewing proposals for the Foundation's newest initiative. Morrison Media had become known as the company that gave second chances, and applications had tripled. Profit had actually increased. Turned out treating people with dignity was good for business. There was a knock on her door. Julian entered, now the Chief Technology Officer, one of the youngest in the industry. He'd been promoted twice more, earned entirely through merit, and was considered one of the top cybersecurity experts in the country. "You busy?" he asked. "Never too busy for you," Natalie said. "What's up?" "Maya got her acceptance letter. Full scholarship to MIT, pre-law program." Natalie felt tears spring to her eyes. "Julian, that's incredible!" "She wants to specialize in criminal justice reform," Julian said, his voice thick. "She says she's going to change the laws so people like me don't lose everything for one mistake. She says you inspired her." "Her father inspired her," Natalie corrected. "She saw you rebuild your life with grace and determination. That's what inspired her." Julian shook his head. "She saw you give me the chance to rebuild. That's what made the difference. Without you, I'd probably be homeless right now, maybe in prison again. Instead, my daughter is going to MIT." He paused. "How do I thank you for that?" "You already did. You showed me that success without humanity is meaningless. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. And you helped me build something that matters more than money." "Friends?" Julian asked, a question they'd answered 100 times, but still meant something. "Friends," Natalie confirmed. "Always." After Julian left, Natalie turned to the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there were 23 other people whose lives had changed because Morrison Media took a chance on them. Somewhere out there were their children, their families, their futures that had been salvaged from the wreckage of past mistakes. And it had all started because Natalie Morrison delivered a package to the wrong house and chose mercy over revenge, possibility over punishment, humanity over efficiency. She'd built $1 billion company, but this network of second chances, this community of redemption, this was what she'd be remembered for. This was her real legacy, and it was better than any profit margin could ever be.
If this story moved you, you've just experienced the heart of Becca Stories. We create powerful narratives about transformation, resilience, and the courage to choose compassion over judgment. Stories that remind you that people are always more than their worst moments. Subscribe to Becca's Stories and join our community that believes in second chances and the transformative power of forgiveness. Every week, we bring you stories of single parents solving impossible problems,
of ordinary people choosing extraordinary compassion, of lives changed by one brave decision. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. Comment below and tell us about a time when someone gave you a second chance that changed your life. Because here at Becca Stories, we believe that every person deserves the opportunity to be better than their worst moment. We'll see you in the next story, where single dads show us what real strength looks like and transformation begins with one courageous choice. Until then, remember, sometimes the wrong address leads you exactly where you need to be.